Welcome to Enclave, which is now the work of Tenny Nathanson, David Weiss, and me. I'm Charles Alexander. We owe a great debt to the founders and curators of this series in 2020, Jean Huving and Ray Armentrout, and we are trying to follow their blueprint with readings at 1 p.m. on Sundays by one author at a time, with an introduction that provides some insight into the work, and with only a single comment by Tenny or me afterwards without Q&A or further conversation. What Jean and Ray created was a great help in the first pandemic year, and we don't want to try and fix what was never broken. We envision the continuation of Enclave as a series of 8-week sessions, and with a break of a few or several weeks between them, and at some point in the future, we'll invite others besides Tenny, David, and me to curate such 8-week sessions. But we plan to do all the work in the first 2 such sessions. In this inaugurating 2021 Enclave, you will see and hear in order over the next 7 weeks an array of poets we are humbled and happy to be able to present. Daphne Marlatt, Tenny Nathanson, Edwin Torres, Monica De La Torre, Will Alexander, Alice Notley, and Myung-Mi Kim. All of these readings are open for your RSVPs at chax.org, book online, where you registered for today's reading. We begin today with Norman Fischer. Norman Fischer is a poet, author, Zen Buddhist teacher, and priest. A graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop, he has been publishing poetry since 1979. He's the author of 17 books of poetry, 6 books of prose on Zen and religion, as well as numerous articles and essays. His most recent publication, Experience, Thinking, Writing, Language, and Religion, is a long-awaited collection of his essays about experimental writing as spiritual practice. Norman has been a Zen Buddhist priest for nearly 30 years. He served as abbot for the San Francisco Zen Center from 1995 to 2000. He is the spiritual director of the Everyday Zen Foundation, an organization dedicated to adapting Zen Buddhist teachings to Western culture, which he founded in 2001. One of the most highly respected contemporary Zen teachers in America, his teaching is known for its eclecticism, openness, warmth, and common sense, and for his willingness to let go of everything, including Zen. Norman's many books of poetry include 3 from Chax, most recently, Any Would Be If, and forthcoming, a selected poems. Also several books from Singing Horse Press, O Books, The Figures, Tuumba, Tin Fish, Talisman House, and more. I don't know about you, but to me, that's a hall of fame of independent literary presses of the last 40 years. He's also one of America's most important and versatile cello players. Wait a minute, that's a different Norman Fischer. But since we all share air and cellular material, we'll count him partly for our Norman Fischer, too. Music is music, after all, and the poet Norman Fischer's music puts us in a field of common air, an air of common fields. Norman writes in On Whether or Not to Believe in Your Mind, the pleasures of rhyme fade behind the facade of questions. Questions. One of my favorite statements about poetry since I've been writing and publishing it comes from Jerome Rothenberg in a 1979 interview titled The Thwarting of Ends, where he too focuses on questions and says, "The only absolutes for poetry are diversity and change, and the only purpose over the long run is to raise questions, to raise doubts, to put people into alternative, sometimes uncomfortable situations, to raise questions but not necessarily to answer them, or to jump ahead with other questions to challenge the most widely held of preconceptions in our culture that Western man is the culmination of the human evolutionary process." I might add to that Rothenberg quote, as Norman suggests in his writings, to also question whether man is the correct focus of our attention at all, as opposed to the entire field that includes all people with all else, the more than human world. In some ways, though, Norman's poetry does not push the discomfort, rather lets it tumble softly aside to reveal such dear quiet as if a darkness full of light surrounds each all. Any something celebrates the nothing that supports it. That's from the poem Seasons in Questions, Places, Voices, Seasons from Singing Horse Press in 2007. The world is always happening in multiple ways. Fischer reminds us that different poems with a single title makes you wonder what that title has to do with anything, as if several definitions had been given for a single word, which in fact is always happening. But then the difficulties, perhaps even of such multiplicity, have not tumbled away, as the poem continues to say, why can't the various nations that sell oil to US unite and bring US to its knees? Because they misunderstand each other. And that's from Success, Singing Horse Press 2000. So Norman's poetry works against conventional understandings and also against conventional and all misunderstandings. In the poem, I Was Blown Back, from Singing Horse 2005, he defines poetry. Poetry is a way, not a topos, in which something appears. It's a sway among a swarm, to be hurled from side to side against the language walls, that tunnel subversive through what is, as far as it is known, occasioning a gap in mind through which you could theoretically drive a truck. Except that in so much of his poetry, the bouncy ride of driving a truck through anything gives way to an exhilaratingly open and generous sense that you are already there. To rewrite Stein, there is a there. And Norman Fischer helps us become aware of it and aware of an extended and eco-involved us. Please welcome Norman Fischer.
Thanks, Charles. That was really great. A lot to think about in there. So thank you and Tenny and David for inviting me to read in this series. I attended a lot of it, most of it, I think, when Ray and Jean were doing it, and it's a wonderful series, and I consider it a great privilege and honor to be able to be part of it. Thanks to everybody for showing up. I got my second Moderna vaccine yesterday, and right now I feel like somebody hit me over the head with something heavy, which might improve my reading. I'm hoping so. Maybe it'll make me talk less and read more and depend on the words. I'm going to read from 3 different books, and then theoretically I have time to read a couple of short new poems, so that's my plan. I'm going to read first from Conflict, which is a Chak's book from 2012. It's a serial poem about everything that I could contemplate about conflict, torture, war, people just not getting along. That's what it's about. So I'll read you a section from this text. Lenticular clouds paint the sky phthalocyanine, as if arms or wings flung open, not moving, spots on my tie. Ralph and me walking round and round in Santa Fe circles, someday an originary thought to analyze the obvious. Everything depends on the rain being at all. Sorry, I forgot to say, there's voices appear in the poem every now and then, and I usually try to indicate there's a kind of a really horrible voice that appears, and you'll hear it. I'm absolutely And you, nobody too, you of all people should know. Modes of consternation, heart of the matter. Eternal I am. A border conflict, a gateless frontier, until you say so. A light with possibilities, ever aloft. Looking for a storehouse world, online search yields forked results. You will read me, are reading me now. Ralph Steele weeps again in Vietnam. I've been here before, breathing this poison. Bodies forth my darkness, here on every touch. Torture confronts the painful truth that each has its price, and there are reasons, always reason. Laws and rules peacefully point the way to pain. Hills become lover, nemesis, kin. Whoever wrote the memo, remember what to protect. Crack in the door, everything sucked out through the little opening. The photos, humiliation, being one, the pride of knowing one, what one proffers to be known, gone when you don't sleep, crushed when you can't breathe, out of control in a panic. Who takes satisfaction where oblivion's the matter? To be wood, the body only bears so much. Akiva raked with combs till his flesh tore off, climbed the final rung with here, H-E-A-R. Who pays the ultimate price? How can you sleep when you know? Forgive the sinner, the powerful, make the strong weak. Puncturing the soul, the will's the flesh's weakness when it depends on me, what and who I am. Erect now a golden calf. Worship. Believe. Absolutely believe. Pain comes in waves. They do and don't relent, come in, go out, as long as life abides in time. Sensation, the heart detects its reasons. How much I depend on standing up, breathing air, moving in time, space, limbs, and sinews at rest, without pressure. How easily the world dissolves absent this accustomed ease. An animal merely knows no horror outside its life. What's worth protecting? To what extent? And when? Does protection exceed that worth, its cost in pain, overreaching the value of existing, which always had a not in it, N-O-T. A not, K-N-O-T. Is there something I should be dying for? Can I choose it? No, it is not right. Therefore, I must kill you, or if not, gouge out a hole in what you love and hold more dear than life, demeaning that a world dissolves in smoke rising. What's truly unbearable? We bear what we bear and go. Shouting is not raping. Raping is not stabbing. Stabbing is not shooting dead, dismembering, beheading, gouging out the eyes, skinning alive, burning at the stake. For your actions of the past, for what you profess, for your kinship, your place of residence, your skin, your words, your possessions, for what I see as myself, my size, my meaning, I protect. Follow the thread of my passion, my will. There's no forgetting this ever. Fool myself with my argument, only to live and go on living in its face. Motivated, the rest comes behind. Pelicans following a boat. Naked statements of fact do not move me. They are not so. I do not see my enemy, passion, not human. His reasons are crimes to make the world a nightmare I have dreamed, to prevent which I sleep screaming. A nightmare I don't know I live. A world of limited possibilities, all artifice and sneak, cutting off the simple music for tortured silence. No statement possible. I know too much to speak well. What used to be funny still is. Falling down when you least expect it, pushing a stone uphill. Your beauty's source, a question removed without reply. The world poured into the dark opening that you are, and not given, made. And the difference? Thus, unstable, pursuing itself, clawing your second nature, culture, the totality of human products, the earth throws off like wind, sadly smoky, glazed with your absence. that nasty voice rasps my throat. Now I'm going to read from, I think, a 2018 or 19 book called On a Train at Night, which was published in France by the University Press of Rouen and Havre. And it's also a serial poem about, I'm not sure exactly what, probably my usual obsessions. But it's sort of one thing that characterizes it is it's an acrostic poem, which only means in this case that there's a bunch of poems that begin with A, a bunch of poems that begin with B and C, and so on through the alphabet. And there's a whole thing at the beginning about that. But I'm going to start at the letter M. Modern moral philosophies of obligatory action. Careers for the coroners. spiritual dissemination, caterwauling creativity fretfully among reptiles. And here, at last, among us, free, independent, lonely, powerful, rational, responsible, brave individuals, collapse amid impossible imperatives, completely lost in aisles of utensils, ornamentals, condiments, perfect in fleshly inherited violence, melting calmly in the storm of daily time, impecunious and rash. Heterospecious incantations and soothing if disguised vocabularies in which words manufactured of imbricated letters give way to wordless texts, too hot to handle, though ubiquitous. Cool intellect surrounds and surrenders her folly to power of pulsation in battering several instances of space in the middle of sounding like an ending, moved by the structures present at the outset before the instructions were given. Modern culture inaugurated in Montaigne, who seeks self among contradictions, swaying form, eerily shimmering in honest original failures. Heart reprimands itself for reassignment of blame. In friendship that took my breath away, in which I cannot repeat except in repetitive crime, each death of every day. Moral sentiment seared as a tuna steak, self or other as ethical mirror shattered in showering numbers, that I rise up within your gaze embraces mine. For that power of partiality, wholeness' measure that is the gaze. Nothing can have and hold but staggers back against the hillside, waiting patiently for their serial rebirths. No mere repugnant catastrophes. All we need of these we have. Witness the broken reed of their hair. Birds coming in, going out beyond the frame. Small demi-perceptions, unforeseen, of crows and lizards, battered, discarded refrigerators, formal ending never meant for this location. Residual eternal return keeps the piles growing, the times a-changin'. Mercy, mercy calls the street with its many detractors, I guess balding and pale. All arms and handstand eyes reaching back for a pillow at night say there's only mercy. Violence is mercy. Violence is love. Can you say this? Mercy is violence, shattered numbers, broken letters, whole shifting strings of letters, words, calling out to one another in ship of fools, fallen shards, the 10, the 12, the 33. Canonical concordance appease speakers in squares who slow down to a squabble. Conflict and improvement over silence, silence and improvement over speech. Here, her credence, her maneuver, her credentials, her credenza. Mercy, mercy for sinners who've overshot the shot, paraded the words, shameless to be heard, who dared speak insolently, insisting they make their mark before they go. No, we're in the N's, the letter N. Normal love, as in writing Chinese, is found in a lizard's claw. Expressive strokes against hazy clouds, lazy movement in maiden rhythm, a flurry of feathers and lime. All in all, energetically counted, because they failed to endure matter's tall despair, accompanied by the pipe dream deliberately organized around a shadow. Everything stands firm as a post, yes, but it stands for something else. No marks the mark, wantings the destitute's diploma. Where's relief in that? In the middle, peering down the darkened corridor into fog, I'm fending off minutes that flick their forked tongues against my hooded eyes. Fall where you are, where the solutions ought to come from but never do. Nothing's ever that simple, it's just nothing. Sputtering, galloping, mouth flutters in mind gong, whose reverb splashes out in widening circles in sparkling distance, so long as immense unkindness prevails in mistake of matter's oblique positioning. No mar, no breakage. Waves pulse and tremor, rush, sweep, and gaps, long spans for paddling and silent waiting, till the gathering whirl and swell, tumble, resolve, then quiet. Love recognizes its tempo. Little people running to and fro in comic nights. Immediately stuck to life like lint on a sweater. Nevertheless, I count on tomorrow's arrival and its eventual soaking collapse. Not rehearsing because of the care taken to loosen their names, they make a face glimpsed in a mirror and questioned. You couldn't have it another way. Ocean's rough today. The brain dazzles poetry that never appears in this space. No more vestibules, no more thundering vegetation, no more wondering about how it is. Rice and tea in the country. How to take the clear taste without being hypostasized by lack and turned inside out like a shirt sleeve. At home, you invent the melodies, songs of the survivor years. Nothing indelible floats in and out the scene like stars around which waves crowd, a sudden spraying out or up, washing clean the doors of conception. I do not mean to walk away, only add my cup of red dirt to the dwindling party. Life on earth is green, leaf tenderness, water simplicity, gravity's ferocious clutch. No more prowling around bastions, no more hurrying along, getting its business done, no more cute, cuddled items clustered in their prettiness, eliminating the need for an inner life. How what's done undoes, spraying seed all over the place to glaze millennial beliefs with crystal view, too dazed to notice the carnage perpetrated in human-made caves of statement, shouted accusations before the Violence Bureau, lacking nothing but a purview, a condition of rush. Being myself's too much. And the last poem in this series, in this section of the book I'm going to read is the title poem, which starts the O section, On a Train at Night. On a train at night in snow, hard nuggets ping against rushing tracks, snakes gone amok, raging worlds, senseless slithers darting tails behind in dream of sensible life, swallowed all whole as train rattles on, writing words to skull's tune, luminous letters wriggle blackly, monstrous across the track, clatter in their consonantal casings, sickly sweet, soft vowels, fluttering like eviscerated birds, world's weight drowns in second sea, unless it floats out to you, O sun, spinning round the sky like a dancer. So that's all from that one. And now this is a brand new, this just came out. So I'm very excited about my Nature, it's called. And it's actually a conversation with a shameless thievery of a rewriting of Nature by Ralph Waldo Emerson. So I'm going to read a little bit from this one now. This is from chapter 7, Spirit. Is that right? No, I want to start, I think, earlier. Yeah, I'm going to start with chapter 6, Idealism. And this is in prose, if you can tell the difference. 2, poets do far better with far less, evoking preternatural experience from syllables twitch, tiny pulsations within the soul. Here we find actual air, sun, mountains, countryside, city, politics, passion, the hero, the maiden, snatched from world, lifted from page, swirling in ear. Poets unhook things from their fixedness, pivot in thought, spewing newness. They are heroically, if quietly, to look at them no one would know, spun by history and the timeless, addressing world with feeling, feeling with world, for without words, worlds and feelings press too forcefully and pierce. An ordinary person conforms thought to the things he proposes exist beyond it. Poets conform things they know they do not exist otherwise to thought. The one assumes the world is firm and given. The other knows there is no world outside the fluid, flexible, fungible, and prophetic cast of thought and word. The refractory world is ductile. Dust and stones are human. Imagination makes the world usefully embraceable, placing it within the scope of feeling, reflection, and love. Shakespeare dissolves world and expression's solution. His imperial muse tosses fluid world about like a bauble floated from hand to hand. He props the whole of it behind any word that strikes his fancy at the moment, improvising wildly within his paper-thin plots. He visits out-of-the-way places, knits together the split apart, shows subtle spiritual connections plain. The magnitude of material things is relative. All objects shrink and expand when the words churned in spirit rule. Thus, in his sonnets, birdsong and flowers are the beloved's shadow. Time, which keeps her from him, is his chest. Suspicion an ornament, joy a box of Kleenex, a well-paved road, the curiosity that killed the cat, a jacket worn by a night watchman, and all the cumbersome packaging in which his order arrives. So much pulchritude of invention. Somewhere in all this, a crow is eating a power bar. His passion isn't just something he feels. It's a city, a terrorist attack, a newly opened outlet mall. It's no accident, nor does it suffer objectionable pomp, nor furrow its brow in discontent. It doesn't worry about policy, that heretic that works on short-term contract. It stands politically alone. His constancy is so great, it makes the pyramids seem a recent construction. His youth and his love are more dazzling than dawn. Her lips are forsworn, her eyes the break of day, which, when flashing in the evening, mislead morning. Thus the passions of the poet derange nature and violate the common sense for no apparent reason or useful purpose. The great are dwarfed, the small magnified. He shakes the mountain, uprooting the pines and cedars upon it. He then plays soothing music, which cools down his brain that had been boiling in his skull. The spell then dissipates, and as the morning steals upon the night, melting the darkness, so do the senses begin to chase away the fumes that mantle reason and understanding, which begin to swell, and the approaching tide fills the shore that had been muddy and foul with clear and bracing waters. In such ways, the poet plays the world like a lute and asserts the predominance of the soul, despite all the bad news. Three, thus the poet animates nature with thought. She differs from the philosopher who proposes truth as her main end, while the poet's beauty is a shredding of truth into interior design. Ever colorful and constantly shifting strings of luminosity, bright in the listless afternoons, as if suspended over waterways. Yet the philosopher, no less than the poet, subsumes whatever order and apparent relation between things into the austere, dark corridors of thought. The problem of philosophy, according to Plato, is to find the unconditioned and absolute ground of the conditioned. A doomed search only a confused and misguidedly hopeful person without family or useful trade would conceive of. A great luxury for the alternatively abled. Philosophy proceeds on the faith that things make the sort of sense a mind can apprehend. This would enable minds to predict what happens next, thus reducing the natural terror minds feel when things seem out of control. We call the products of such efforts ideas. Ideas are infinitely beautiful. Thus, both poets and philosophers are beautiful in their relation to truth, which is so elusive. Plato's and Aristotle's definitions are as imaginative as Sophocles' Antigone's passion. In both cases, a spiritual life has been imposed by the mind onto nature. Matter has been dissolved by thought, and the pathetically vulnerable and temporary human being has penetrated nature's vast mass with the informing soul, recognizing the soul itself as implicated therein, in harmony with all. And now I'm skipping, and I'll read a couple of pages from the next section, which is chapter 7, Spirit. Mind, who can deny it? Even in denying it, we demonstrate it. And who can define it? It's perfect, beyond compare or description. Nature, facts can be known, and nothing abides. It's a process of factual disintegration. A divine dream. Maybe we'll wake up. Idealism must be so. It provides its own proof, for mind's boundless container expresses the question's limits. Yet the spirit sinks. It wants more. I seem to need God in me to be myself. Otherwise, there's just the swirl of thoughts, worries, perceptions, needs, desires, a labyrinth with a devouring monster at every turn and no way out. I must insist on the comfort of something here or there or somewhere beyond my mind. I need the affection. I must be attended. Who will read my words? Hear my sobs? Bear witness to my ontic needs? Nature is only human, as far as I am concerned. She is me, I am her. Yet all good thinking leads me away from this comforting feeling. Soul over here, me. world over there, you. This is matter. But when we ask, where does matter come from? Where does it go? Thoughts flood the mind. We know that time collapses, location erodes, and what seems ungraspable illuminates the heart. Matter comes from nowhere, goes nowhere. How could it? The heart, the soul, swoons with this light-filled certainty that behind, within, and throughout nature, spirit sweeps, hidden and completely revealed. There is no space and time out there, nor consciousness in here. God doesn't create nature for me to look at. My looking is God and nature in one, just as a branch or a trunk isn't an observer or an antagonist to a tree. It is the tree. As a plant on the earth, so humans on the breast of God, whose nourishment is drawn from fountains and springs rushing from snowy mountaintops or the sky. Human possibility is boundless. Justice and truth are not abstractions. Breathe them and know God. Virtue is more than practical or obedient. It's the certificate of truth, purifying the soul for vision. The world is the human body. It is the projection of God in the unconscious mind. It is serene and inviolable. It expresses the divine. It is a fixed point from which we may measure our journey. But we grow old. Our body becomes strange. Nature, alien. God seems closer, clearer, more obvious in the peered into distance. We can't understand birdsong. Foxes and deer run away from us. Lions and tigers, if they are near, tear us apart, for we are easy prey. We forgot most of the plants except maybe corn, apple, and tomato, whose names we still recall. We see faces in the landscape, grand faces, comforting faces. But we can't acknowledge these faces or even notice them with clarity because in the foreground, laborers are erecting an office tower. The poet is ridiculous until she's out of sight of the others. So I didn't think of this, but I'm reading all this. It's a little bit much. Sorry. Sorry about that. So a little more fun. We'll have more fun. I have about 5 minutes. I'll read a few. Lately, I wrote a lot of long works, like extended works. And so lately I've been just writing short poems. They're all called poem with little, this is Poem, the dog. The diligent dog's noble obedience that makes him feel fine to be thus dedicated to master his strength in knowing whom to follow, whose will shall be forever correct and to be heeded. Some things are more than life, to know to whom loyalty is paid with all your beating heart, for whose bidding you'll consume all your life's power, to whom all intensity belongs, to serve even when you don't comprehend, to wait no matter how long. Here's what surpasses mere existing, desire beyond self, serving the diligent, noble dog knows what life demands and gives it freely with all his soul. Poem, The President. The president insists on his mad conceptions, utterly, absently, experimentally with pouted lips, and purrs. He purrs like an old cat. He can no more stay with a subject a length of time than I can. We are more than a little alike. We have our obsessions, a single obsession that takes myriad forms, spurting out in cadenced words that shift like quicksilver. Let's keep the government out of the businessman's pocket. Let's let freedom for the businessman ring like a cold brass bell struck dead on with an iron clapper. A person has just so much energy, he believes, doled out by God with the original package. And if you waste it on vigorous games or just walking around outdoors, well, that's too bad. You must instead consolidate power by shaking off your enemies violently like a dog out of water shakes vigorously the wetness out. Blimpy body, mountain-esque, in deep blue suit and delicate shoes, rising up on tiptoes to coin new phrases of dismissal and vituperation, like a biblical prophet mocking God's enemies, which the faithful will affirm. God has a sense of humor to send such a one to set the reeling world atilt. And the last poem I'll read today, The Bird. Thought to write, in all seriousness finally, for once about something. So now about the bird comes to mind in own voice, writing that flew into house yesterday. Wren it was, small, brown, fluttering bird, frightened by window, not knowing where it was or how or why, appearing in disturbing circumstances, tipsing off and down to bump on windowsill, then bop up, not finding way out through glass toward light and familiar air. What's glass to a wren? In this, there's a moral lesson, certainly, or an epiphany, something to be suddenly seen directly, metaphorically, in the bird's sincere and desperate efforts, or maybe in the very sound of words used to elegantly or not so elegantly describe sense of bird now trapped inside, not knowing it's inside or how it got inside, trying, tipsing, fluttering against glass to escape with no possible sensible plan, but hurling body back by trial and error, mechanically or desperately or hopefully awaiting some result, or not even having a conception of result or change of state. But anyway, foolishly, endearingly whacking and thrusting body this way and that inside a world means something endearing or anyhow useful or of interest about human predicament. For all readers of poems are human, deserve some mirror-like reflection of their condition to make the reading of poem worthwhile. But this is of no concern to this or any other wren. So we proceed from either end to slowly stalk wren, directing said wren toward open door, which wren fails to notice, flying past outstretched arms to further recesses of house, on floor near fireplace, or further windowsill fluttering, then crouched, panting in corner not far from another open door, through which it flies to freedom. Then a happy ending for wren. End poem. If poem were to end here, without an element of summing up, a message, a moral, or anyway, at least a satisfactory aesthetic thrum or murmur, but no, the poem drones on past the wren's exit, groping for some point, some raison d'etre, without sensible plan, but wagging of tongue on teeth till tongue's sheer focusless force abate, and poem slides to its own dear, ceaseless conclusion. And that is also the conclusion of my reading. And I'm very grateful to all of you for sitting still for the whole time. I really appreciate it. And I had a great time reading it, and it definitely cheered me up. So, last words from our hosts, I guess.
Well, my last words are thank you. I feel like my ceaseless conclusion has only begun, and taken through that fluid thought field, word field, flying into freedom is absolutely wonderful. Thank you for starting this or restarting this series in such a wonderful way. I don't know if any of our other hosts have a word.
Yeah, thank you for being so much like Emerson's nature and putting forth spirit, with great energy through everything, even the Moderna virus. It's a wonderful, wonderful reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It's really great to see so many friends here. I really, really appreciate everybody coming. Thank you.
Well, thank you for everybody for coming, and I hope we see you next week and all of these next several weeks.